Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our continuing coverage of the International Remote Viewing Association Conference here in Menlo Park, California. We are so entirely honored to be welcoming literally a legend in the world of remote viewing, Lyn Buchanan. He is the author of The Seventh Sense, The Secret of Remote Viewing is Told by a Psychic Spy for the U.S. Military. Many people in our audience are probably aware of your work over the many years with things like Project Stargate.
Yeah.
Let's start off the conversation here with how you came into and became aware of remote viewing to begin with.
Remote viewing?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Have you ever seen the movie The Men Who Stare at Goats?
Absolutely.
Okay. In the scene, it shows Lyn as killing the computers, and then later it shows him as killing the goat. I didn't kill the goat. I did kill the computers.
Oh, wow.
And as I understand, about $50 million worth of computers.
Wow.
And General Stubblebine, who was the head of the Intelligence and Security Command, got wind of it because he had people trained to look for these events. And so I realized what had happened, and I was keeping quiet about it. But there was one of these trained people who happened to see it happen and went back and told General Stubblebine. Well, about a month later, he came out to the field station there in Germany to install a new commander. And guy came in to me and said, "You're Sergeant Buchanan. The general wants to see you go in there." Man, I must have really screwed up this.
Yeah.
And so anyway, I went into the commander's office, the waiting room, and sat there. And General Stubblebine and the brand new commander came in. And Bert, General Stubblebine, I became really good friends later. Bert stopped. I was standing there at attention. He looked at my name tag, and there was my rank on my shoulder, and he said, "Are you Sergeant Buchanan?" And I felt like saying, "Well, duh." Yes, sir.
I think so.
Yeah. And he said, "Follow me." You follow the general. He grabbed my arm and pushed me in front of him, which is absolute no protocol.
Yeah.
We got into the new commander's office, and the new commander was following the general. General Stubblebine turned around to the new commander and said, "I need to talk to Sergeant Buchanan. Get out." The new commander looked at me, and I knew what list I was going to be on from then on. And so he left. General Stubblebine, I was standing at attention. He got up in my face and he said, "Did you kill my computers with your mind?" And I thought, I can't say what I thought, but I could see my great-grandkids paying for computers, and I thought, I've got to lie about this. And I said, "Yes, sir, I did." And this grin came across his face. And if you've ever seen The Men Who Stare at Goats, that was exactly the grin that came across General Stubblebine's face.
Wow.
And he said, "Far effing out have I ever got a job for you."
Wow.
And he took me back to D.C. to start a unit that would mentally kill enemy computers, with the end goal of controlling their computers so that if they fired a missile at us, we could make it turn around and go back or drop it into the sea. And we could put false information into the computers and all that.
Disable arming systems while in air, things like that.
He had this very grandiose plan about doing it, and I'm here to tell you it would have been possible.
Wow.
We could have done it. And Congress, he had to run it through Congress to get funding. Congress said, that's mice of mind control. We don't do that. Because back in the 60s, they get caught doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
Church committee hearings.
And so they just shut him down on that idea. So there I was in D.C., no assignment.
Wow.
So he took me out to Fort Meade to the remote viewing unit and took me into this old ramshackle building that was just a sort of a dump of a building, It was an abandoned building, really. And they took me in and read me on. Now, reading you on is where they hand you a sheet of paper, and that paper tells you what the unit really does, not what they tell the public.
Yeah.
It does. And you read it, and down at the bottom, if you reveal this to anyone, it's $10,000 fine, 10 years in jail, and all that. And I read it, and I thought, I'm on candid camera here. Army didn't do this. I signed it. And over the next couple of weeks, I watched the guys in the unit, and they were doing it. And I mean, getting fantastically accurate information about any enemy installments, any enemy plans for the next day of battle, and all this other stuff. And it was accurate. And I thought, must be possible, but I'm not going to do this. I don't know how to do this, And so they started me in on a training program. I learned it, and I took to it like a duck to water. I loved it.
Wow.
Since I was about 12 years old, I've had this PK ability. When I get mad, you've heard of poltergeist kids? Actually, that's very common among young children, extremely common.
Sure.
The only ones you hear about are the ones with mental problems.
Yeah.
They're the only ones that get the press. But it's very common, and I was one of the poltergeist kids. And so I'd been suppressing it all my life. One of the men in the unit, a guy named Skip Atwater, after I'd had before I really started my intense training, took me over to the operations building, and he sat me down and he said, look at the molding around the room. And I did. He said, now look at the molding around the ceiling here. And I did. And he said, I want you to know something, and don't forget it. In this room, it's okay to be psychic. And felt like a weight was lifted off my shoulder. I'd spent years trying to hide all this and all. And I thought, this is great. And they started teaching me the remote viewing, and I loved it. It was what I'd always wanted to do.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask, because this is a question that I asked Deborah Lynn Katz when I had her on the show.
Yeah.
Is it presupposed that somebody? I am a firm believer in the fact that we all have these abilities. We all have psychic ability. It's kind of like running. Some people are more naturally apt to it. They've got a different gait.
Absolutely.
Some people, it may take a little bit more effort to get up to competition speed. But is it the fact that you have to be psychic and have psychically honed abilities in order to remote view?
No.
Okay.
You already have those abilities. One time, Russell Tarb came up to me and he said, you're telling people that remote viewing can make you psychic. And I said, no, I've never said that. You already are psychic. The remote viewing that Inga Swan did really has nothing to do with being psychic. It's an interview and report process where you interview your own subconscious mind and you report the information accurately as your subconscious gives it to you. Any interviewer could learn the CRV process and become a greater interviewer. because it's interview and report. And it so happens that at the subconscious level, you're very psychic. And so I went through this process of learning this methodology, and there I was drawing floor plans of buildings halfway around the world.
Wow.
Predicting Saddam Hussein's plans for the next day of battle, predicting troop movements. One of the drawbacks to it, I predicted that if they drive Saddam Hussein north, he's going to burn those oil fields. Drive him straight west, and then north. And they said, no, they drove him straight north. And you've seen the pictures of all the oil fields going up,
Yeah.
So the military had us there as a unit because they knew we did well. But our information went into a big melting pot of all the intelligence services and quite often got ignored, usually for bad results. But this was one where they ignored what we said.
Yeah.
And
well, and not many people realize that operationally it may not have been under the same name, Project Stargate, but the program itself went on well into the 90s.
It had started in the 60s, and actually it went under 7 different names.
Wow.
But every time it leaked out and there was a remote viewing unit, they canceled and disbanded the unit completely. And the next day, we would go back to work, and they'd say, here's the new project you're in, and we'd continue it.
Yeah, here's your new read-in.
Here's your new read-in.
Absolutely. And that's something that is a pretty standard practice in the military. I mean, the prime example would be the reclassification of UFO to UAP.
That's right, yeah.
And literally, people were filing FOIA requests for like 5 years, 10 years, and they're like, sorry, we do not investigate UFOs.
We don't.
Because they don't. They investigate UAPs.
That's right.
And it gives them perfect permission to flip that cause every few years.
Oh, yeah.
Now, how long did you spend in the military program?
In the remote viewing program.
In the remote viewing program. Because you were, of course, a military service member prior to your involvement with the remote viewing program.
Nobody ever asked what I did before the unit, and I'm glad. But I was there about 8.5 years.
Now I kind of want to ask you what you did before the unit.
I was an intelligence agent.
Okay.
Just leave it at that.
That is all that need be said. Because we cannot be read onto that.
No.
And now, let's flash forward a little bit, because after your years of involvement with this, once you left the military, you actually started your own consulting firm, using remote viewing and the remote viewing protocols and techniques for all kinds of things.
I got out and started doing work for one of the Beltway bandits. Do you know what that is?
Explain it to the audience.
Okay. A Beltway bandit is one of the computer companies that line up their offices around the Beltway and charge the government, $2,000 for every line of code, and they're bandits. I mean, they just steal the government money for these programs that any teenager could write. And so I went to work as a programmer for one of the Beltway bandits. And about 2 years afterwards is when they declassified the fact that the military had been using remote viewers.
Yeah, that the Stargate program actually came public.
And that's when people found out that during my 8.5 years there, I had become the trainer. And so I started getting all of these phone calls and messages and everything else. I want training. And it was declassified, so I could do that. And I had been secretly working the assigned witness program for the police.
Oh, wow.
And so that became public too. the assigned witness program, I was talking to a detective one day, and he was asking all these questions and all. And I said, look, what is it you really need? He said, I need a witness. And I said, I can assign one. And all of a sudden he said, oh, that's what you do. And I said, yeah. And I started the assigned witness program working for police departments. And so anyway, it became public. I had been traveling almost 2 hours into D.C. to go to work every day, 2 hours coming home, working an 8 to 10 hour shift in D.C. at the Defense Intelligence Agency. And I was getting all these calls for training. And I thought, I can do that at home.
Yeah, right? Don't have to go 2 hours every day.
So I just walked in and said, I quit.
Wow.
And I started teaching at home, started my own company, developed the controlled remote viewing database that is for all controlled remote viewers, and never looked back.
Wow.
And I'm glad.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Good for you. With that in mind, let's start talking a little bit about the process of remote viewing, because of course you brought up controlled remote viewing.
Controlled remote viewing.
There is, for those in the audience that don't know, there's the concept of CRV, controlled remote viewing, and precognitive remote viewing. So
there's
and numerous speckles in the spectrum between. Even today, hearing people talk about using remote viewing to play the ponies or sports.
Cryptocurrency.
Using remote viewing to spot trends in crypto. Things like that. It's really interesting to see all of the applications. But what is the process and the protocols?
Okay. When you hear remote viewing, that is generally any psychic method that used to be called psychic is now called remote viewing.
Okay.
The controlled remote viewing was a development by a man named Ingo Swann, who developed it for the military. And he developed this method because the military wanted to grab a soldier out of every unit, train them to do this, whether they'd ever had any experience or not, send them back to their units so they could tell the commander
in the field,
where to point the guns, things like that.
Yeah.
And
if intelligence is accurate, or absolutely.
And they found out that training was too extensive and all that to do that, so they formed this unit where they trained remote viewers who would work for all the units. All the units and all. And so that's the unit they put me into. And the controlled remote viewing is, the military wants everything uniform and standardized. Yeah. And so Ingo developed this.
Got to be able to be in a manual.
Oh, yeah. Ingo developed this highly standardized, formalized method for interviewing your subconscious mind. And the thing is, it was never meant for psychics. It was meant to grab a dumb soldier off the battlefield and teach him how to do it.
Wow.
And so CRV was never meant for natural psychics.
For intuitives and...
And so if you have the natural psychic ability already, and then you're better at it.
Sure,
because you have that extra talent that's come out. However, if you have and you've developed your own methodology, we have to untrain you from your method, and that before we train you into the other.
Well, sure. Because you've got to be able to have a quantifiable result.
That's right, yeah. And so it's databaseable. It's proven in the laboratory. It was developed in the laboratory. And it works. It can be taught to anybody. It's a formalized method of interviewing your psychic subconscious mind and reporting purely what you get without jumping to conclusions or anything else like that. A natural psychic will say something like, I don't know what the target is, but it's red, it's round, it's rubbery. And this beach ball, let me tell you about this beach ball,
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, and it's never a beach ball, And the example we give, a psychic will say, it looks like a horse, it smells like a horse, and, it sounds like a horse and all this. And this racetrack that we're on here, it's a zebra out in the Serengeti,
Yeah.
But the minute they say horse, they jump to a conclusion, and they're wrong.
Yeah. And that brings up, I think, a really important point. How important is it, I guess, to be dispassionate, even when interviewing one's own subconscious?
It's good for accuracy.
Okay.
Now, when the target is a person, it becomes especially important. We have a lot of people who say, I want to learn remote viewing so I can help bring home missing kids. And those are about the only student applicants that I kind of try to talk out of it. And I tell them, you access a child that's been abducted, molested, murdered.
Yeah, are you ready for that trauma in your own head?
Are you ready for that? And all of a sudden they have second thoughts. Now, the thing is, in the teaching methodology we teach you to protect yourself from such emotions and things like that so that you can be dispassionate.
Yeah, because you've got to have that emotional disconnect, just like being a paranormal investigator. I'm sorry, folks, but if you watch paranormal investigation shows, you don't look at evidence while you're on site.
Right.
You just don't. You are caught up in the adrenalized moment. You could totally misinterpret any footage. All of those shows
all of those shows are recreations anyway.
And it's interesting though, because when you're talking. I was having a conversation with a remote viewer outside last night, and I asked her the honest question because I interview a lot of clairvoyants, I interview a lot of psychics, things like that. And I was like, do you treat yourself as a horse and put blinders on? I myself would be, I guess, what most people would call empathic, where I can walk into a room and spot the person that probably needs somebody to talk to. And it's hard for me to be in a highly energized environment whenever I'm working as an AV engineer, or because people are like, didn't you run sound for bands for 20 years? I'm like, yeah, but my focus is on the energy between me and the band on stage.
Right. Yeah.
It's not on these 85 people around me whose energy is muddling me up. What is it like for you as a remote viewer to deal with that? And do you have to buffer yourself walking into public spaces?
Okay, here is a long, complex answer to a simple question. Okay. When you're learning, your tendency is to get involved with all of these distractions and everything else. And so it's in the training that you learn to protect yourself. And so in the beginning, when we're training people, we never tell them what the target is. And we have a monitor that if they start getting emotionally involved, the monitor will distract them or make them take breaks or something like that. And the monitor knows how to guide them through these things and get them away from
walk them back from the emotional response.
This is why you don't want a remote viewer training you. You want a controlled remote viewer training you, because we have trained monitors.
Sure.
And so as you learn and you get experience, you got a couple of years of experience doing all these targets, pretty soon it gets to where we can tell you what the target is, tell you about the question and all that, that's needed to know.
Yeah.
but then guide you to the unknown. And you have developed such a discipline that you don't let all that knowledge cloud your viewing. But now that takes years of experience. It takes training and all that. But you'll hear them say, never let the viewer know what the target is. And we further that because everybody says, oh, I can do that, and they can't, because they don't have the experience.
Yeah, and how, especially just to loop back to the conversation of preparing someone and asking them, is that really what you want? Do you really, are you sure you're prepared for the repercussion on yourself? At what point do you professionally consider a viewing invasive? When viewing a person,
invasive.
Do you have a cutoff personally where it's like, okay, I'm supposed to remote view this person, but at what point do you go, okay, now we've gotten too personal?
I'm not going to view the girls' shower room. Stuff like that.
Sure.
But you have a task to do, and so. Let me give you an example.
Please.
There was a facility, I won't say where, that was highly classified and seemed to be fully protected from psychics, even remote viewers, controlled remote viewers. And there were no way to get ground agents in, no way to bribe anybody that worked there and all that. It was more protected than Area 51, but it was a facility. So they had given the project to different people. They'd failed. And so came my turn, and I failed. And I thought, well, now, wait a minute. I'm going to assign myself. The place has to have a manager. We didn't know who it was and all. So I tasked myself, access the manager. And just describe the manager. Found out that he had a son that he was very proud of. And so that's when I went into the thing that we were forbidden to do, but I did anyway. And that was remote influencing. And I got him.
Next question.
Yeah. I got him sort of daydreaming about the fact that he could never show his son what his daddy did. And so what if they had a father-son day at that facility, and I got him daydreaming about taking his son through the facility and showing him what daddy does and all this other stuff. And so he was sitting in his office daydreaming about what he would show his son, and I was at Fort Meade taking notes.
Wow.
And that's how we found the information.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. And the concept of remote influencing.
That crosses the line,
Yeah.
But we needed the information.
Sure.
And we got it.
Prime example, like you said, of a real personal and ethical quandary when it comes to using your ability.
If it saves lives, I'm not going to have any quandary at all.
Sure. Yeah. Especially in a military sense, in a military application.
Yeah.
Now, when it comes to remote viewing, is it the fact that sensations come to you? How does the process personally work for you on the inside?
Like Lyn? I say, it is an interview and report process. The CRV is.
Okay.
Now, with remote viewing, you sit there and they say, just let it happen. Let what happen? What do I do?
I could let my imagination run a million ways.
Oh, and it will.
Yeah.
In the remote viewing process, you learn how to cue your subconscious mind for certain specific bits of information. This is why you can draw the floor plans of a building you don't even know exists, but it's over there somewhere. It's how you can, we say we can copy documents that are locked in safes. You do it one letter at a time. It may take you a month to do one paragraph.
Wow.
But we can do it.
God, I can't imagine losing your place in that.
Yeah. And, but the thing is, we learn how to cue our subconscious mind for specific bits of information, and whether they make sense or not, you report exactly what you get.
Yeah.
And then you may finish a session and you look at it and it's total garbage. You can't make any sense of it at all. So it passes to a CRV analyst who understands symbology, allegorical information, and all this, and has learned how. He's trained CRV analyst. They can go through and look at what appears to even the viewer to be garbage, and come up with a highly accurate bit of intelligence about an enemy facility and things like that.
Wow. Now, a couple of hard questions regarding specifically remote viewing and the remote viewing community. Because, as we said, there's speckles of a spectrum of remote viewing that pass through all kinds of community. Where do you fall on remote viewing things like Mars?
Been there, done that. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And
that's sort of a pun. Been there on viewing it, But there comes a time when, how you were saying you focus on the band, and the crowd around you just goes away.
Yeah.
There comes a time when your concentration in a remote viewing session is so highly focused and you get so interested that the room around you just doesn't exist anymore. And it's called, first of all, bilocation or perfect site integration. And it gets to where you cannot tell you're not at the target.
Wow.
You're not at the target, but you don't know that, because the information that's coming to you from your subconscious mind, you can feel the wind on your face, you can smell the smells in the air, you can feel the sunshine and all this, and hear all the noises and everything else, And so on something like that, when it gets that intense, you can say, been there, done that. The first time that ever happened to me was when they gave me Mars. And
what were you?
I was never on Mars, okay?
Sure.
But everything inside of me says, I've been there. I've done that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what was your task viewing for Mars?
Oh, it was find evidence of life. And I did. And I wound up.
What did you find?
I found some actual living beings, but they were just worm-like things, not intelligent beings.
Okay.
And I was inside this sort of a chamber, and I noticed some stairs going up and out. And so I went up the stairs, found myself in a hallway, and when I remote view, I always take my shoes off. It's habit, I'm a Texas boy.
Yeah. Connection.
And, and the sand was under my feet, and down at the end of this hallway was an opening. And so I walked down to the end of the opening, leaned out, and noticed that the side of the building was humongous and sloped. And I looked out. The sun was very dim, and I could see these just crumbled, and you could tell they were structures, but they were so eroded and all this, and got their location from that point. And I reported that. And
Wow.
they said, okay, and didn't give me any feedback. They said, yeah, it sounds like you were viewing Mars. That was a successful practice session.
Okay.
I was out in California at SRI, and they had a picture on the wall, which at one time was highly classified. And it was of the Sedona region. And, our satellites can read your license plate from 250 miles up.
Yeah.
But it can't get a sharp picture of a mountain. Come on.
Yeah.
And they had a sharp picture of the Sedona region, very sharp. And here was this sort of pyramidal structure over to the side. And I looked, and there's small opening on the side of there.
Wow.
And I thought, been there, done that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lyn, that is incredible. And once again, just to consider the fact that by all physics, it's all connected.
Yeah.
So the traversing of that, what does that do to you? How wearing is a viewing session, especially one of that caliber and distance?
It's different for each viewer. I know Joe McMoneagle gets ravenously hungry. Other people may get sleepy or tired. I get energetic. At the end of a session, I want to go do something. You know? And different people have different reactions to the remote viewing, as they get trained and experienced. But generally there is a reaction. And there are some targets that no matter how much you protect yourself, you'll be affected by them, battlefield situations. One of the things about those kind of targets, we have methods to help you get rid of your emotions and get rid of the bad feelings and the bad memories and, the bad emotional reactions and all that. But you can never get rid of the memory.
Yeah.
You always remember what you saw. Yeah.
I was gonna ask, how close is that to literally PTSD?
It can get pretty close. Yeah,
because that's pretty intense, and like we're saying, especially whenever you're looking for lost and missing, abused children, stuff like that. That is a swath of energy that you're dealing with.
After service, I got a thing for a police department in another country. There were missing children, and there was this. I did session after session after session. Found this terrorist group that was abducting children and using them for slaves, sex slaves, service slaves, and all that, and not taking care of them. And when the children got to where they couldn't serve, they used them to train their new recruits to get used to shooting people, killing people. And they would use them for target practice.
Wow.
And the police kept giving me more and more retaskings until they finally found the place and stopped them. And, that I still, you can't forget it.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah.
I imagine. And that is something that we've really deeply gotten into over the last few months on this show, Lyn, is the other side, the flip side of the coin to any paranormal experience, whether it's a ghost experience, experience seeing a UFO, UAP, Bigfoot experiences, whatever, is you think you want that experience. Go through and read the experience reports.
Oh, yeah.
Come back to me again.
That's the same
when
thing.
you find an 80 percentile that's really good and happy, you let me know.
Oh, yeah. That's the same thing. I went through the experience and I have all the memories. So did the soldiers that went in. Wow. And, they went through the same experience. Yeah. They have the same memories. And so, yeah, it's it's what you sign up for.
Yeah.
And if you don't want those experiences, don't sign up for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is something that, you've got to be mentally prepared for.
Oh, yeah.
No different than going into a war zone yourself.
Yeah. Well, this is why soldiers get trained, and this is why controlled remote viewers get trained.
Mm.
And listen, the training is just ultimately important. And this is one of the drawbacks of the remote viewing that you find on the internet. They don't train you for this. Mm. And also, one of the things that I resent about it is some new person will find they have psychic ability, maybe for dowsing maps. And so they look for information, and there is a tremendous amount of good information and good training on dowsing. Mm. And yet they get told, no, that's remote viewing. You have to learn to remote view.
Yeah.
And it's not what they want at all.
Yeah.
And so now then it's become the umbrella, and everybody's getting funneled into remote viewing, and we're losing good dowsers. We're losing good scryers.
And you are literally muddying the waters of remote viewing research.
Absolutely. Yeah.
While at the same token.
Yeah.
And that's a really interesting twist to put on that. At this point in the history of remote viewing, we're celebrating 50 years. Like, that is what this conference is. It's the 50-year anniversary. And to know that these programs have been going on that long, that people like you have been involved in the field for just about that long.
Just about 37 years now. I've been doing it. I've been teaching. Yeah, 37 years.
And how do you take on a student? For those that are, and granted, I'm not inviting everybody to contact you and come be a student. Definitely go to his website. We'll get to that in a minute. Go register and buy programs, things like that. But what can people do to prepare themselves to find an instructor?
I generally tell people, back when computers were coming in, the first question was, what do you want it for?
Yeah.
Same with remote viewing. What do you want it for? I want to win the lottery. Okay, you don't want CRV. You want ARV. And so I'll funnel them over to an ARV teacher. I want to find treasures. Okay, I can teach you that, no problem. I want to save missing kids. That's when I sit them down and say,
You sure?
Really?
You sure?
And so, it's instructor ethics. I could say, pay me money and whatever you want.
No, you could take money hand over fist.
Yeah, and I personally can't do that. I can't do that.
Well, you've got to make sure that, number one, you've got the bandwidth to be able to give that person the proper attention that they need.
That's right.
As an instructor.
Yeah.
And number two, you've got to make sure that they are prepared and ready for the steps.
That's right.
That it takes to get into a program and commit to a program.
Yeah.
Because it's just like any good prayer or meditation regimen or exercise regimen. It is something that you have to dedicate yourself to daily.
Oh, yeah.
And what do you recommend as far as those daily preparations for remote viewing for those that are out there getting ready to practice?
We have 3 rules. Practice, practice, practice.
I love it.
Yeah. No, but like somebody comes and they say, I want to learn remote viewing because I want to find out what happened to my uncle. They want to learn remote viewing over 10 years of time to answer one question. I say, you don't want remote viewing. You want a remote viewer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You want to task somebody is what you want.
Yeah. And so, I try to funnel them, and in the process, I find out who the people are who really want to do the work, how disciplined they are, and all that. By the way, people who study martial arts make good remote viewers not because of talent, but because they're disciplined.
Yeah.
They will do the practice. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, you were getting a phone call, I believe.
I am? Excuse me.
Or is that me? That's not me.
Let me cut this off. I'm
sure
sorry.
thing. No worries at all. Now,
sorry.
That's okay, because I was wrapping up, and I have one final question for you, and it's a hard question because it's a community question, and it's one of those that
okay, yeah.
I want to speak to somebody of your ilk about it. The recent claims from Uri Geller about remote viewing the location of the Ark of the Covenant.
Okay.
I am actively in the search right now to find contact for him, things like that. I would love to have him on to talk about his remote viewing experience with that. And he is definitely one of those people that is up there in the remote viewing community. But where do you fall when it comes to claims such as that?
It's a location.
Okay.
Describe the location. That's
follow protocol.
We teach that in the basic course. Yeah. And first of all, find the location, give the information. Then the person who wants it has to decide, can I legally go on that land?
Yeah.
Stuff like that. No, but we've done a lot of moon exploration for moon exploration companies. I did one for a civilian space research that is training astronauts.
Oh, wow.
And what they wanted was protection for their astronauts. They wanted an area book. They already had the destination planned and all. You know what an area book is? Okay.
Vaguely. Explain.
We give our diplomats, when we send them overseas, an area book that tells the religion, the habits, the customs, and all that, so that they don't go over there and do something stupid and start a war.
Sure. Get themselves kidnapped
killed, And so...
these are red zones. Avoid those areas. All that kind of stuff.
This company has it planned. They know where they're going and all that. And so what they wanted to know is, are we going to meet intelligent life? And if so, give us an area book so we don't start a war.
Yeah. That is a joke I've made on this show numerous times is, oh, no, we went to the moon. We were just invited not to come back.
That's right, yeah. Could have started a war,
Yeah.
And so we did it and got tasking and retasking. We did the area book,
Wow.
Now, before... every psychic that watches this says, I'm going to go do an area book. Listen, you've got to have documented proof of your work. You've got to have a database of your work to prove your accuracy. In your grandfather's day, they said, show me proof.
Yeah.
Now they say, show me your data.
Yeah.
If you don't have the data,
absolutely,
forget it.
And where can people go to become part of the remote viewing database that you built? Where can people go to participate in that?
We keep the database pure. It's for controlled remote viewers only.
Okay.
And those who are trained by qualified CRV trainers. There are a lot of people out there saying, I teach CRV. And you ask them, what does CRV stand for? Well, I don't know. They're just wanting your money and stuff like that. And so, the database, we try to keep it pure because, the first rule of databasing, garbage in equals garbage out.
That's right.
Yeah. So, we keep the database very closely pure for trained remote viewers only. Yeah.
Wow.
So the average person can't get to the database.
Good. How can people become a member? How can people become a part of the database?
My website has 3 courses that I've developed. ARV, Associative Remote Viewing, Basic CRV, and Intermediate CRV. I also have a list on there of other qualified trainers who are qualified, experienced CRV trainers. Those are the only people I would ever recommend.
Wow.
And if they're not on that list, I don't recommend them. And so my website has that. Other than that, if you just get on Facebook or something like that and you find somebody, I'm teaching CRV, be very careful. You can pick up bad habits. You can pick up targets that will scar you for life.
Yeah.
They really will.
Yeah.
And you really have to be careful.
Yeah. Fantastic warning to end this on, because that is one of the things that we definitely talk about on this show. We like to just demystify topics.
Yeah.
And help educate people to best practices in how to protect themselves, whether it's out-of-body experiences, you know, what have you.
The medical applications course that I teach, almost the first half of it has nothing to do with medical applications. It's how to protect you from the sick person. If they're physically sick, that can affect you, you know, and all that. And that's not too bad because you get over that. If they're spiritually, emotionally, or, you know,
mentally,
that can damage you.
Yeah.
As a viewer, you get sucked into that.
Well, yeah, because in order to view, you've got to go like Flash and match your vibration to that vibration. That's intense.
And so, like I say, about half the course is not about doing the medical applications. It's about protecting yourself from the illness.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, where can everybody go to register for your classes? Where can everybody go to find out more information about ARV, CRV, and your intermediate
My
courses?
website is crviewer.com, crviewer.com.
Okay.
There are others, and they're on that list of qualified instructors. I have no financial ties to them, but you know, they may have a schedule that fits a person's needs. And the thing about CRV is it is standardized. So somebody takes my basic course, and then I don't have an intermediate course coming up, but they want the intermediate course. All the other CRV trainers, their intermediate course picks up exactly where mine leaves off, and vice versa. And it's all standardized. The terminology is the same.
Fantastic.
And so on. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just it. It is not a myth, folks. It is a science. It is literally a science. It is studied and it is documented. Yeah. And it is probably one of the most amazing revelations in the last half century, Lyn.
It's the human mind.
I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank you for your years of work, for your years of exposure on this topic, helping expose things like Stargate and bringing this knowledge to a much larger audience. So thank you for your time on this very, very busy IRVA conference. It's been fantastic. I'm now a lifetime member of IRVA. And I can't wait to keep coming to conference. Good. And finding out more. Make sure to stop on by crviewer.com, folks. Keep up with all of the research from Lyn Buchanan. Stop on by, take his courses, get his books. Lyn, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your interest.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's one of the most riveting topics out there for me.
I think so.
Yeah. It's mind-numbing. So while you're online checking all that out, folks, make sure to stop on by Curious Realm. CuriousRealm.com is the website. That is where you can follow us on social media. It's where you can find all of our platforms that we are at. And it is also or you can tune in live every Tuesday, 8 p.m. Central. We will be back with you in a little while, right after this break, with more coverage from the International Remote Viewing Association Conference here in Menlo Park.